Hey, everybody, and welcome to my latest live stream. This one's going to be focusing on the two latest DC Universe shows on two separate networks, a new CW one and one on HBO that just started last night. First, let's talk about Batwoman. Batwoman, I had semi-high hopes for. I was hoping that it would be good. I love the comics, the character. It's just a great series. But Batwoman has really, really let me down. So in the first, I gave it 2 episodes. I gave Batwoman 2 episodes to prove me wrong, that it wasn't going to be boring, stilted, uninteresting, and lackluster. And what's happened, let me get closer to this microphone. But what's happened in the first 2 episodes, the show has managed to rehash there's like 3 core elements that it just rehashes over and over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, well, screw character development, screw us learning anything about these characters other than these 3 things. And those 3 things are, did you know she's a lesbian? Number 2 is, oh, I have angst about my sister. And then number 3 is, I have family issues with my stepmother and my dad is an authority figure. And that's it. Those 3 things are what they just bang into your head over and over and over and over. In 3 episodes, I would say that they went over those 3 plot points at least 4 or 5 times. And at least, I mean, if not more. And that's it. And it's like, okay, well, I forgot one. Is she her sister or not? So that's it. And they've had 2 episodes to at least get further, and they've gone nowhere in those 2 episodes. There's been no story, progression. It's just been boring and the same thing repeated over and over again. Now, I know what you're saying. It's like, oh, Jessica, it's only been 2 episodes. Give it more of a chance. 2 episodes of this show. I mean, you can go back to series like Buffy or Angel or any of the original, like these good genre shows go places, they move. And I can tell you just from these first 2 episodes of Batwoman that this is going to be the narrative. This is how this show is going to turn out. This is how the show is going to roll. I feel bad because I like Ruby Rose. And you've got actors like Dwyer Scott who can actually act. If you give this guy material, he can do great things. He's a really good actor. But within this show, Dwyer Scott is left to just basically look pissed off and just glare. There's been a couple of moments where he cried, but basically he just stands there going like this. That's the range they give him. Ruby Rose is basically just given 2 plot points for her. Her character has 2 distinguishing features, and I was really worried about this. And by God, they did it. Did you know she's gay? That's the thing. They have made this character her one defining trait, that she's a lesbian. There's no other aspects to her really other than she's a lesbian and she's got daddy issues. She's pissed off. So she's pissed off and she's a lesbian. That's basically it. That's all you get with her. There's some moments where there's a little bit of character there. And I think that's just Ruby Rose trying to do a little bit of something with it rather than be a walking, cartoon, not even a funny cartoon. She's just, I wouldn't even say cartoon. It's more like she's a piece of wood just standing there and looking pretty. But it's so, man, this kind of thing is why you have such issues and hard times when it comes to finding content that really shows women can be interesting and cool and innovative and neat. And that's why Batwoman, the comics, were so freaking great. But the show just is made her a two-dimensional character with two traits: anger, angsty, I guess we put in there a little bit, and she's gay, and that's it. That's all this is about. The whole 2 episodes, I would say probably 70%, 50% of it was about that. And that's it. I mean, it's like, well, there's more to a person than those 2 traits. There's supposed to be a character in there. And we're not getting that. And that's why this show is getting the low ass ratings that it's getting. Like, if you go online, some of the websites out there that track this stuff and go by reader reviews and things like that are giving it like a 1.5 stars. If this was on Fox, it'd be canceled already. I think that if it doesn't ramp up, I know they're going to be utilizing this for Crisis on Infinite Earths coming up. But man, I don't know if there's going to be a second season of Batwoman. If why throw money at something like this if no one's watching it? I mean, it was a chore to get through that second episode because it literally was not anything happening. And that to me is just a disservice because those comics are beautiful. They're beautifully, that's the other thing. It's drab. I was so surprised because the comics, especially the storyline that they're taking this from with the whole Alice thing, they were beautiful. They're some of the most beautiful comics I've seen in a couple of years. They are painted. They're gorgeous. They're art. I think comics are art anyway, but these are like beautifully painted, gorgeous design on them. And instead we're getting this drab, lackluster, just cheap. It almost looks cheap. Like there's like a lack of budget or something going on here because it looks cheap on top of everything else that's going bad for it. I wasn't impressed with the look. They still don't have her in the Batwoman suit. She's still wearing like that. There's no flowing red hair yet or anything like that, which I'm surprised by. You would think they would get that out of the way quick. But no, we have to waste more time with this crap that we've already heard. So yeah, Batwoman, guys, I just can't. I can't. It's a bummer too because the later issues in the series, they do some really great stuff with vampires, and that would be neat to see later on. I don't think this show's going to get another season. I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, it's Warner Brothers owns it, but I think it just is a disservice to Kate and her character. And it's not Ruby Rose's fault. I mean, she's doing what she's got, she's only got what she can do with, what they give her. So yeah, Batwoman, I hate to say it. I was really hoping for more, but it just is not good. And I think everybody's actually said that at least once now. So I'm going to move on to Watchmen, which premiered last night on HBO. I have very, very, very mixed feelings about Watchmen. I went into Watchmen with very low expectations because I really don't like Damon Lindelof, at least his work. I don't know the guy personally, but he's pissed me off a lot with things that he's done, things that he said, his writing, his work. This is, of course, you know him from his work on Lost. Lindelof did the movie. He's co-wrote movies like Cowboys and Aliens. He co-wrote Star Trek Into Darkness, Tomorrowland, which was horrible. But the thing that everybody knows him for, of course, is Lost. He also got trunked off of Twitter. I think people just got pissed at him and just let loose on him about that. He also co-wrote World War Z, which the only thing World War Z wise I liked was the fact that Peter Capaldi played the Who Doctor. Yeah. Anyway, so Watchmen, I was not holding out much hope. I'm still not, because Lindelof's trick, and by the way, this is the thing that really, I think, sealed his fate on Twitter and really sealed his fate with me, was his work on Prometheus. Prometheus pissed me off on so many levels. And when you jack with my aliens, you jack with me. And that movie was shit. It was shit. I'm sorry. And he basically came out and said, after, when there was an outcry, he's like, I just did this to screw with the fans. Ha 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 ha. So yeah, let's take 30 years, 25 years of story and mythos that we've created and just piss all over it just to, screw with the fans, because, screw us. Yeah. So there's the guy that took over Watchmen. Now, I've read the comic. I love the comic. And I liked Zach's movie. I love the movie. Jackie Earle Haley was a revelation in that film as Rorschach. It was the unfilmable, and he did it. He filmed it, and he made something great. He made some major changes to the comic, which a lot of people were not happy about, or kind of like, eh. But I've seen like every version of that movie now. I've read the comic. I've read the spin-off comics that they did. And it's hilarious because Alan Moore just hates all of it. He does not give two shits who you are, what you're doing. He just doesn't care. He hates anybody messing or doing anything with his work other than him. So I went into Watchmen very hesitant and scared of what he was going to do. And the first episode, I liked maybe a quarter of it, 25%. And that 25% was pretty much the beginning part. And that scene, the opening scene that everybody and their brother has talked about now. And I will admit, I had no idea that was a true and real thing that happened. I think part of it is probably because I wouldn't want to think that my country and people that live here would do something like that. But yes, that was real. All of that happened, including the planes bombing people and blowing them up and killing them because they were African American. And the Tulsa riots and race war, basically, that was all real. That all really happened. I learned something thanks to this episode because no one taught us that in school. I never had heard any of it. And apparently I wasn't the only one, because that was like wildfire spreading across the internet after that aired. That was a real thing that happened. And it's just thinking about it makes me sick. It just makes me nauseous. Even my husband had no idea. And he's an astrophysicist. He went to college and he didn't even know. So it was, that part was amazing. That whole sequence was just gut-wrenchingly horrible. But then we go from that to this jarring jump into modern time, and no explanation, no nothing. And we go into this modern world where Vietnam is a state, which if the comics were set in like the time, like Richard Nixon was still around. He got to be president like numerous times. And if you've not read the comic, this series is going to make you go, what? And that's part of my problem, because a lot of people who've seen the film, a lot of them may not have read the comic, and they're going into this thinking this is a continuation of the movie that they liked. A lot of people who have read the comic and seen the movie thought this was going to be spun off from the film, but it turns out it's the comic. But if you're going into this not knowing anything other than what you learned in the movie, you're going to be lost, no pun intended, completely. You're going to be like, what the shit is going on? Why are squid raining down? What the hell does that have to do with anything? So for those of you who don't know, in the comic books, Vite, Ozymandias, utilizes this squid creature to destroy New York. And because of that and the rampant fear of a possible alien invasion caused by that, he doesn't tell people that that's what he created that. Everybody thinks it's some sort of weird alien invasion thing that destroys the city. He kills all of these people, and he does it in order to avoid a mass nuclear war, which is coming because of Nixon and all the infighting and the wars that are happening on the earth, right? That we're doing to ourselves. And it works because it refocuses everybody onto this thought of stopping aliens and stopping this horrible thing to happen again. Now, if that sounds complicated and weird and wow, that's why the comic is that thick. And that's why Zach decided to not do it that way in the film, because there's no way you could have really encapsulated that in like even a 3-hour film. And that's why he went with instead there being a machine that's going to do it and make it look like some sort of attack. So in this universe, though, in this series, the squid happened. And they have like little nods to it in the background. That's one cutesy thing that they do throughout this episode. You'll see little nods and not so little nods to Watchmen, like the happy face out of the egg yolks. And then at the end, by the way, there's spoilers here. If you haven't seen the episode or you care about being spoiled, you might want to wait until you've watched it to watch the rest of this. That's why you have the blood drops on the shield at the end, and she's drinking out of a owl coffee cup because of Night Owl, and there's all sorts of little cutesy things that they do. I picked, I probably missed like a bunch of them because there's probably a bunch of them in there. Robert Redford's president. That was a choice in this world, because he's like the most opposite from Nixon, I guess you could get. And so the problem I had with this was it kind of just drops you into this universe without really knowing any of the prior stuff. Now, I don't know, in the next episode, are we going to get like a flashback to another period? Who knows? Who knows how they're doing this? Maybe. So they drop you into it, and you're kind of like, what is going on after the race riot thing and the Tulsa massacre? You're like, oh, where what is going on? Like, it's so random, and there's no explanation. You have this guy shoots this cop, and he's a Rorschach. So the only reason I was like, oh, there's the mask, he's some Rorschach guy, and we'd seen the trailers. And so you find out that there's this massive race war thing happening now, in terms of there's been you don't know the ramifications of that massacre that happened at the beginning, but it almost looks like and feels like the world has sort of flipped race-wise, with African Americans being very affluent and being respected and more than they are, and there's this whole thing there. And I don't know if it's more of a tension that they don't want any of this to happen anymore, or what it is, but it almost seems like they've tried to flip it, and in terms of the way things are perceived now, like the African American main couple in this, they have two adopted children that are white, instead of the end thing being like, a lot of people are like, oh, white couples like adopting black kids because it makes them feel good, or it's the end thing or something. So they've done that in this. I noticed that. So it's an interesting take, but we get put into this without any kind of explanation or anything. So as the episode goes along, you kind of figure it out, and you suss out that in this modern time, the police have to hide their faces because they don't want to be murdered or killed by extremists for doing their job. They have this extreme thing where the cops can't withdraw their weapon without it being approved or released for them. And then they have, oddly enough, they have these vigilante-esque types that aren't like the other police that have full-on masks, like they're Watchmen, I guess. So you find out that this is happening, and then you have to pretend you're not a cop in this world. And this is a real, from what the original, this is some extremely changed stuff, from what I remember. So I'm watching it, and it's all over the place. Like there's no explanation, and even though I like the music, by the way, there's music in this that's great. It was very John Carpenter, and it turns out that it's Atticus Finch and I think Trent Reznor did the music. It's very 80s. Like, I'm not joking when I thought, did they just rip this from like Escape from New York, or did they rip this from freaking Big Trouble in Little China? It's jarringly 80s in a series that's supposed to be set now. It even has the date as 2019, but the music is all 80s. Like, it's totally synthesize-y, John Carpenter, hardcore sounding stuff. So I like the music, but it doesn't fit in a story that's supposed to be current, and it's distracting almost. So I don't get that, but okay, whatevs. Whatever. So I'm watching this, and it's so sporadically crazy, no explanation. I couldn't even tell you the names of the characters. I will tell you that Don Johnson was freaking awesome. He was really great. Guy's 60-something years, 69 years old, I think, or close to it, 67, something like that. Looks fantastic. He's great in it. He's playing a badass old guy, and just, Regina King is fantastic in it. She's great. But I didn't even know her name until I looked it up, like it was so sporadic. What I would have liked in the first episode of this is, it would have been nice for them to do some sort of like newsreel. I know that sounds hokey, but something to set up your world. Let us know what we're getting into here. Give us an idea. Give us some history. How did this happen? Where do we go from here? Don't just toss us into it. I mean, we're smart. We can catch up pretty quickly, but there's, I need to know where we are. It would have been nice. But, and within the episode, you're seeing these nods to the Watchmen, and there's this big thing about the big character that you actually see Dr. Manhattan in there. You see these ads. You see there's a big what's his name? I'm trying to remember the name. But you see, there's going to be like a special on about the Watchmen, and specifically the main character in this. And let me think here. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I'm just completely blanking out. Anyway, but it's cute, and it's nice little fan service in there, and that's fine. Then you have Ozzy. Well, I can't say he is Ozymandias because you don't know for sure. They haven't actually said that he's who he is. So if you know, like I said, Ozymandias decided to take on the and do the squid. He squidded everybody. And so he disappeared, and his name was Adrian Veidt. And he disappears, and he goes away. And so within the episode, you see this character named, they just call him the Lord of the Manor. And it's Jeremy Irons. Jeremy Irons being Jeremy Irons. He's very Jeremy Ironsy. So he shows up, and you don't know who he is for sure. But boy, I'm thinking he's Ozzy. And as the episode progresses, you get to see more of Jeremy Irons than God ever intended us to. It's really, really, really weird. And I never wanted to see that much of Jeremy Irons. And when you're seeing him, he's sitting there naked on a chair, and he's typing, and he's having his very chafed thighs rubbed by his maid. And it's just a really weird, uncomfortable, unneeded scene. Oh, God. But yeah, so he lives in this manor house with his two servants, who are very odd, that are played by Tom Meissen and Sarah Vickers. Now, Tom Meissen, I didn't even recognize him. But if you watched a show a couple of years back on Fox called Sleepy Hollow, he was Ichabod Crane. He's completely changed himself. He got a haircut and everything. I didn't even recognize him. He plays the creepy manservant of Jeremy Irons, possibly Ozymandias. And Sarah Vickers plays his housekeeper, who was really going to town on his thighs. Yeah, I said that. So anyway, that's happening. You don't know if it's him or not. He seems to live alone on this property with these two servants that are oddly not human-esque. They act like robots, maybe. Now, there's one of two ways that could go. It's either going to be Ozymandias, or it could be Dr. Manhattan living out some weird fantasy life. Because in this one, Dr. Manhattan left and took off, and never to be, he's off on Mars by himself. He kind of did that in the movie too, but he definitely does it in the comic. And apparently later on, we're going to actually get Jean Smart will play Laurie Blake. She's playing the second Silk Spectre. So if you know Jean Smart, she was in Designing Women. She's been in a lot of stuff lately, and she's fantastic. So that'll be interesting to see her as an older Silk Spectre too. Anyway, as we go along, going on in the background is a special about this character named Hooded Justice. Hooded Justice was very, in the comics and in the movie, he wasn't really talked about at all. But in the comics, you never really knew his identity so much. He had a noose, and he had a hood, and it was, now in this first episode, you see a lot of him in the background. And in the beginning of the episode is when that whole massacre was going on. There were two survivors that we were focused on. One's a very young baby, and the other is a slightly older boy, probably in 4 or 5 years old, who survived and took the child with him, who had a note that his parents, who died in the chaos, left with him, said, "Take care of this boy." So Hooded Justice is never really seen. You don't know who he really is. So as this episode's progressed, and the more I thought about it, the more I'm thinking the way they're wanting to, at least they're very much indicating it to be, is that the young boy grew up to become Hooded Justice, taking the visage of the KKK and the noose and making it his own in his own way, taking it back. So as the episode goes on, we run into this man, his older man in a wheelchair, who talks to Regina King's character, who's named Angela, and he's played by Louis Gossett Jr., classic actor, and he is in fact the survivor of that race riot in Tulsa, and you see him. He acts very strange around her. And at the end of the episode, when all that goes down, he's standing there next to the tree with he still has the paper in his hand that was given to him from his parents when they let him go. And at one point in the episode, and this is where my whole theory comes from. At one point in the episode, he says, "Do you think I could lift 200 pounds?" And Regina King's character kind of looks at him funny and then kind of poo-poos it away. So at the end of the episode, with what happens and where she finds him, I think we're led to believe he may have done that deed or was left there to pin that deed on him. I'm not going to go into what the deed is. I'll try to be less spoilery. And but I think what I'm taking away from this is he is in fact Hooded Justice, and he's still alive. Hooded Justice, I'm trying to remember, didn't have it wasn't a very great end, but that's what I'm taking away from this. And the ending leaves you hanging on why this happened, but I'm led to believe that this character is in fact Hooded Justice. You're going to find that out. It's going to give you some background on him. And that weird question of, can you believe I could lift 200 pounds, could in fact mean a body. I don't know. See, that's the thing. This show has some really interesting parts. But it also is being sort of weird for the sake of being weird. Just because, hey, let's be strange. Why not? It's also throwing out a lot of plot points, which goes back to Lindelof. Lindelof. My problem here is he is notorious for throwing shit out there onto a script and onto a screen and not panning out with any of it. Just having it be distraction away from you because they think that makes it smart writing. That you throw some weird shit out there and maybe people will start wondering about it and all this stuff. And look, we're smart, we're savvy writers, we know, we're real skill craft, and it's not. It's just throwing crap out there because you can't coherently create a whole story. You're just throwing crap out there to distract away from the fact that you don't really know where you're headed. You don't know. You haven't, scoped it out, or you can't fill enough interesting content that's witty or interesting for people to watch. You're just going to throw weird shit out there to distract them away from the fact that, oh, well, that's what's going on. Because let me tell you, that's what happened with Lost. And I keep going back to Lost, but here's the thing that a lot of people forgot about Lost. Lost was a limited run series that ABC was going to do. limited. In the first episode, after we watched it, my husband and I figured it out right away. They're all dead. Well, guess what? They were all dead. That was the whole thing. But in that first episode, we knew. We knew when we watched it that that was the thing. That was their big twist. But when the show took off like a bolt of lightning and was really popular, well, they had to throw a bunch of shit in there to fill it out. And about 90% of that crap, nothing came of. Nothing. The hell with the polar bear? What was that? No. It was a smoke monster. No. What was it? The giant feet? No. Boy, wasn't that great? Same thing with Prometheus. There was no giving of shit in that. They just put a bunch of stuff out there that they thought would look neat, and screw the 25 some odd 30 years of story that we created around the xenomorphs. Who cares? But shit. Guess what? There was a big statue in that too. No smoke monster though, I don't think. That one. Weird shit though. There was goo. There's black goo. Not black smog, but black goo. He uses the same tropes. That's why I'm like waiting for there to be like a big statue showing up in Watchmen. I'm sure it will happen. I don't know. I'm venting now. I'm just ranting for you. So yeah, the Watchmen's first episode, we had the rain of squid. We had a random, weirdly inserted sex scene where, for some reason, when Regina King walks out, she's like bone dry, but her husband's looks like he was sprayed down with baby oil. For some reason, my husband picked up on that one. I'm like, you're right. Well, why? But yeah, there was just so much thrown at the screen in the first episode with no coherency in terms of what was happening, no explanation for where we are and how we got there. It was a mess with a couple of spots that were really interesting, but for the most part just was a mess. The beginning stuff was amazing. I would have liked to have seen a whole mini series about that. They need to do something about that, because now that I know that happened and that horrible event occurred, that's what I'm focusing on. I don't care about the I'm like, oh, Watchmen, oh my shit, that really happened. So yeah, if one thing came out of this episode, and that is something that I never knew about history and terrifies me about my country. And that's the one thing with this whole series, is it's really, really taking on the race stuff, the race war that's really kind of brewing it back. I think they're definitely trying to use this as a cautionary tale about race. There's no metaphor here, really. I mean, it's the metaphor. There's a way to do this that isn't annoying and feeling like they're hitting you over the head with a mallet. And they haven't found that balance yet. It really is unbalanced in terms of the story and in terms of what they're trying to do with it. And I get what they're trying to do with it. You have to be blind and in a hole in the ground, buried in cement, not to see what they're trying to do with this. But the finesse isn't there. The story is just all over the place, and it's weirdness for the sake of weirdness. And that's what these are all trademarks of Damon Lindelof's ability in writing and what he does, which is why I'm not holding out hope for this to be great. It could have been great. It could still be great, maybe, but right now it's a mess, a big, squiddy, drippy, smelly mess. And I would like to see something come of it better. I would like to stick with it and hope I could. Batwoman, I think I'm done. Batwoman's over here somewhere in Gotham's cesspool of poop. I don't know. But yeah, Crisis on Infinite Earths would make me tune in for Batwoman because that's going to be great. But Watchmen, it needs a lot of work, and I don't know if we're going to get that. I guess we'll see. With that show. So here we are. Let's see. Batwoman. Boo. No stars. I guess if I have a rating system. But Watchmen. Shrug. I guess. We'll see. I'll give it another shot. I guess. Man. Yeah. So I'll be back tomorrow with my video review live stream of Zombieland 2, which, spoiler alert, kicked ass. It was so good. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow. But with that, guys, thank you for watching, listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I will also be back, I'm sure, with Zinni to talk about the latest Star Wars trailer, the final trailer for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. I got my tickets, and I am very excited to see it. So, guys, thank you again. I hope you enjoyed this. I will be back tomorrow with Zombieland 2, and yeah, see ya. Bye.